Hello everyone. It's me, Arden Lee, and I'm back for another video today. And today I want to talk about the importance of having our pain witnessed. First of all, you might notice I'm in kind of a funny superhero looking outfit, and my makeup is all glam tonight. That's because I'm about to go play a show with my band. So I wanted to just record a couple quick videos before I go off and do that tonight. So hence the fabulous look coming to you that is brought by my show at State Social House tonight. If you don't know already, in addition to all the work that I do with the Repatterning Project and with my private clients, I am also the front woman of my band Arden and the Wolves. We put out an EP in February 2018 called Who Can You Trust? You can find that wherever you can find pretty much music, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, etc., all those lovely places, YouTube even. So definitely go and check that out if you haven't already. And also, if you're not familiar with my work with the Repatterning Project, I definitely invite you to check out the links in the description box. One is to a free PDF guide about the repatterning modality, and we also have a link to the Repatterning Parlor, which is a community that I started on Facebook for people to come together and support one another on their path to success and happiness. So do give those a look and see if it calls to you. Any of it, all of it, whatever. It's wonderful. So thank you again for joining me tonight. And I want to talk about the importance of being witnessed in our healing. It's actually kind of appropriate, I think, that I'm dressed for a band gig tonight, because I'm going to talk a little bit about how my music helped me with that. I want to talk about this notion that is often hotly debated about whether we need to revisit our pain and our trauma in order to heal it. You know, do we need to go through it again? Do we need to relive it, to bring it all back up again in order to process it and move through it? And I come back to this quote, I believe it was Peter Levine in Waking the Tiger, where he talks about trauma, and he says, it's not even, in many cases, it's not even possible to go back and relive the past, but it's, and it's not necessary either. In order to actually heal something, you don't have to go back and relive it and dig it all back up again. And the more that I look into that kind of research, I definitely agree with it. I think it may be missing one key factor, and I think that, for me anyway, this is still a subject that I'm kind of exploring, and I'm trying to figure out where that line is between, do we need to relive our trauma versus do we just need to acknowledge it? And I do think that it's something that needs to be acknowledged, because once we understand why or how something happened to us, and the beliefs that may have led up to situations like that, then we can look at that and start to change things. Which is not to say that our beliefs are to blame for our traumas either. But with a healthy set of beliefs, it's easier to acknowledge and process and get rid of that energy that gets stored in our bodies from being traumatized. It's easier to do that, to sort of like Aikido all of that energy, regardless of what may befall us. We're given at that point a better arsenal of tools in order to deal with it when we have healed ourselves, and when we have moved forward and started to embrace our power, and that we understand all the power that our thoughts have in terms of creating our realities, essentially. So I continue to look for the nuances and the subtleties for where that difference is, and how our pain needs to be acknowledged before we can move forward. And yet that also means that we don't have to dive back in and relive it and roll around in the mud of it. Essentially, we don't have to role play it out with our therapist, acting like our dad or whatever. We don't have to go back and relive all those difficult times. But I think so often back to my own experiences with depression, and back to all of that repressed rage and anger and sadness turned inward. And I think oftentimes back to pardon me, I'm sniffly today. Hopefully only temporarily. Hopefully it won't show up at my show as well. I think back to this memory that I have of being in a deeply toxic and abusive relationship with a person who, pardon me, who probably was not even quite aware of all the ways in which he was abusing me, because he was someone who, he was likely just operating from his own beliefs and his own ignorance and a deep-rooted sense of the patriarchy. He was someone who was ex-military, Lord knows, like all the beliefs about women that he got, being indoctrinated in the army, So I look back at this and I often look at these memories that I have of him dismissing and brushing off the trauma that he was causing in me, and yet at the same time kind of gaslighting me about mental illness and telling me that I needed help or whatever, because he was mistaking my trauma reactions for a personality disorder, which again, in all honesty, looking at that, I think that says more about what is wrong with our society, that narrative that I was just like a crazy girlfriend and that he was just, a dude, was so much more available than the narrative that he was someone who was abusing me. And I think we've become more and more outspoken about that particular falsehood in past years, but it's still something that we really want to be able to watch out for. So, so I have this memory of him, after years and years. It had to have been like at least 3, if not 4 years of being together by the time this particular memory happened. And I was upset and I was crying, and he tried to get me to put a pencil in between my teeth without my lips touching it, because he was telling me that if you engage the muscles in your face that make you smile, that'll make you happier. And I got so angry. Even telling this story, you guys, I can still feel it. I can still feel my anger at this asshole just wanting me to shove a fucking pencil in my mouth, and that was going to somehow make me happier. And, and my rage, my sadness, and my grief at that point, even though I didn't have the know-how to be able to articulate it and understand what I was feeling, what my body was crying out for, and why after he shoved a pencil in my mouth, I broke down into these giant sobs. And he was like genuinely confused. He was like, what? I thought that was supposed to work, I'm breaking down into these giant sobs. And the reason is because he thinks that all of my pain can be fixed by this hack of being happier, this hack of putting this fucking pencil in my mouth to get me to smile and engage the muscles on my face that are smiling, because somehow that's actually going to fix all the fucking trauma that he's put me through, that has caused all of this rage and sadness to happen within me. And to be bottled up there and to store it there, because we had no way of knowing at that point in 2009, that what was happening was actually gaslighting and was actually abuse, and that no, I did not have borderline personality disorder. I had complex PTSD from having been abused by men my entire life at that point. So essentially, that cry in me came out to have my pain witnessed. And I think about this a lot because, as you guys know, I undertook a massive healing journey between, the start of 2016 and now, basically, and essentially what, one of the most healing things for me, beyond any modality, beyond any coach that I worked with, beyond anyone in the spiritual community or the healing communities who helped me, one of the most healing things that I possibly could have done on this journey was record my album, Who Can You Trust? And throw enough of my resources behind its PR that it got into the eyes of a lot of indie music journalists. And as you can imagine, the indie music journalism scene is filled with a lot of different kinds of people, and a lot of them are really wonderful and really cool, artistic, their senses of discernment when it comes to how something sounds or the references that musicians are making, to other kinds of music and genres and influences. They're so spot on with that. But they maybe, they aren't necessarily, the most, they're not in the communities like these. They're not in the spiritual communities and in the, the communities around self-improvement, talking about all the new Tony Robbins speak, or keeping up with the research on like trauma by Bessel van der Kolk, or they're not having these kinds of conversations. Essentially, I'm essentially going out, and there there were a number of women who reviewed the album who I could tell like they got it right away. They were like, wow, yeah, this makes sense, this speaks to me. But there were a number of men who reviewed the album, and I thought what was really remarkable about it was that, it's pretty obvious, if you look at the album at all, it's pretty obvious that it's about healing trauma, but I also put that into the press release. I was very transparent about the fact that I had used this opportunity for myself to purge all of the pain and suffering that I'd been through in my trauma through essentially through the narrative of lyric writing and music and putting it to song. And also using that as an opportunity to rewrite my stories and to say, no, I'm not going to be in these toxic dynamics anymore. I'm actually going to call this out and say this is no longer okay. I'm going to draw a line now, and I'm also going to flip the script and make sure that I'm healed, that I heal myself by the end of it. That not only am I purging all of this trauma, but that I'm flipping the script so that I can I'm flipping the narrative for myself so that I can emerge from this healed and transformed in a different person, so that essentially the second half of the last song on that album is the thing that launches, into the next iteration of myself, essentially. And so I was very transparent about this whole process throughout my PR and my marketing. And it was so healing to have these guys in the indie music journalism scene who don't normally maybe have all that much reason to pay attention to things like the Me Too movement. I mean, you would think they would have reason because, like, maybe they date women or they live in the world with women anyway, and it's important for us to listen to each other and to understand where we're all coming from, like, as a collective. But that even that idea is not necessarily widely understood by those of us who are just kind of going about our normal lives, who aren't on this path of being self-improvement seekers and questers and doing this stuff that we do, this ascension stuff, this self-awareness stuff, that kind of work that we do, that just not everybody is doing that. And that's you can't force anyone into that. You can certainly shine as an example, but they have to be called to that themselves. And I'm not going to make any judgment calls about that. It takes everyone in our society doing their one, playing their one role in order for everything to come together and function. So here are these people who are incredibly good at being music journalists, and incredibly discerning in terms of music and genre and sound. And they're, but here they are being confronted with the reality of what is behind the Me Too movement, of that it's not just, it's not just a hashtag, but they had to listen to my album in order to review it. So essentially they had to witness my pain. And what's remarkable about that is that as throughout February and March of 2018, as the reviews kept kind of coming in, and as I was reading through all of them, I was like, oh my God, I feel so much better, just because I got these people who were in this scene to some extent that I was in, who probably didn't know any of the people who were my abusers personally or anything like that, but people from this same scene, essentially, people who were like the cool kids in the music scene that I felt I could never get to listen to me or pay attention to me. And all of a sudden they were listening to my entire album and witnessing everything that I had been through, that I'd put into this form, like that I'd put into song. And that was one of the most healing things for me. That was when, finally when some of those reviews started coming in, I was like, okay, I'm good. Like, I'm done now. I'm tired of talking about sexual assault. I'm tired of talking about trauma, and at least as it relates to me, at least as it relates to my music, I want to start moving on to the next thing. Now I've purged all of this. I've gotten it all out. It's been witnessed. But now, like, I'm ready to move on and, like, just be happy and figure out what it actually means for me to create a life out of happiness where I'm not defining myself in terms of trauma, and I'm also not even defining myself in terms of healing trauma. I'm actually just creating a life out of happiness that I get this blank slate now that I'm done with all of that. Now it's like, wow, now what do I create, right? Now what do my relationships look like from here on out? What does my songwriting look like from here on out? What does my work look like from here on out? And hopefully those changes should be pretty obvious, as they're all unfolding. But essentially, trying to heal something before it's witnessed is like is even though you don't have to go through and relive it, the way that Peter Levine, essentially says it in Waking the Tiger, and that a lot of people, Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score included, have said that you don't have to go back and relive things, and that's true. But I really do think that we need to be witnessed in some way or another. And for me to make my album, did it require me reliving it? I don't know. It just required me purging it. It required me talking about it and changing my narrative to it. It's not like I was. It's not. It's not this recreation of a role play kind of therapy thing. I'm not like going back and revisiting that moment. I'm just talking about it and I'm changing my story to it. But it's so important. It was so important for me anyway that I had that witnessed before I could move on. And when I saw that being witnessed to me, I saw it being mirrored back to me, and I saw all of these people, especially like all these guys in the indie music journalism scene, having to witness me and hold space for that and ultimately write about it with compassion, because their reaction was going to be a public one, and I'm sure it didn't hurt that they didn't want to be all labeled douchebags who weren't listening to women. They kind of had to listen to me for a hot minute, and some of them listened more than others, and some of them got it more than others, but the response was really overwhelmingly positive, and I really appreciated that so much, and that was really helpful to me. And so what I want to say is that there's so much out there, especially this is what makes this video particularly important, you guys, is that here I am, I'm the creator of the Repatterning Project, and I talk all the time about how our beliefs and our thoughts can create our realities. And I understand that if I speak that way in a shorthand, that people are just going to say, oh, what, you think I could just think myself happy even though I'm depressed? I'm depressed right now. And what, you think I could walk out in my house and exercise? This is gonna be solved with self-care tips? Really, Arden? And I get that. And what I want to say is that I'm like, you need to be witnessed first. If you're angry and you're defensive because someone is saying that you can change your relationship to your pain with your thoughts, then what that says to me anyway, this is my educated guess, is that anger is coming from that lack of having the experience of being witnessed in your pain, because people need to know what happened to you. You need people to know what happened to you, and you need to know that it was not okay. And they need to know that it was not okay, and that all needs to come up for healing. So essentially, if you're logging on and you're watching my YouTube channel, or you're watching videos on my Facebook, or wherever you're finding my content, and you maybe come across a video that's especially happy, right? That's especially happy, or especially empowering, or hey everybody, you can just change your relationship to everything just by hacking your own thoughts, and you're like, fuck you, Arden. How am I supposed to? Are you saying that I thought this upon myself, that all of this pain happened just because of the way that I was thinking? Fuck you. And I would react that way too, because what you'd be hearing in that moment is you'd be seeing me say, here, just put this pencil between your fucking teeth and smile and you'll feel better, right? Well, that's not the case. Obviously, we all need to be held and witnessed, and I haven't seen a case, whether that's, just with your practitioner, whether it's within your community, whether it's within your circle of friends, I don't care. Everyone needs, perhaps something different for them. For me, Jesus fuck, I had so much pain, I needed the whole fucking indie music scene to witness it, but hey, it worked, right? And who created that? It was me, right? I was the one who decided to invest myself and to create that album and to invest in my healing. So even then, you could even say that it was my thoughts that allowed for that to happen, because it took my thoughts to have that inspiration, to have that being led, to that outcome, and that willingness to invest in myself and to invest in, I wouldn't even say I was even thinking of my recording as being an act of healing at that time. I was just thinking about investing in myself as an artist, but it really was this remarkable moment for me. And I think everyone needs that to some extent. Everyone needs that moment of being held in their pain and being seen and being told, especially if it is a trauma that they have been suffering from, they need to be told, yes, I see that this happened to you and you're having a reaction to it, and what happened to you is not okay. What do you need? Let's let the healing begin, right? So essentially, that's just why I think this is a particularly important topic, because I understand that everyone is in different phases of their growth, and for people who are like more over their trauma than others, they might just be, you know, trying to figure out their new life of happiness. They might be trying to figure out like, okay, I do need to like now go out and get, you know, 30 minutes of sunlight and exercise a day, or whatever. I do need XYZ forms of self-care. And for someone who's like still stuck in the pit, you know, like the trauma pit, like stuck down there, like in the muck of it, you know, unable to see that way out, they might hear things like that and they might say like, well, fuck you, that's not going to solve my problems. And all that means is that particular step is farther down the road than they can see themselves being at currently, and there's nothing wrong with that. All that means is, I think, you know, it means that that person really needs to purge, really needs to be held and to be witnessed in everything that happened to them, and to, you know, to have their pain held for them, and to you know, let it out. And you're not bypassing it. You know, you need to. That's really the difference. Is, yeah, you don't have to go back and relive your trauma all again, but you're not going to be doing yourself any favors if you're bypassing it. And so just finding a way to acknowledge that what happened to you wasn't right, to acknowledge that that you deserve care, that you deserve something better than that, and that in the future you can empower yourself to be in places and environments and around people who are going to treat you better. And that even if something again does happen to you, you know, it's not your fault. There's 1 million people in the world. There's 8 billion people in the world, and some of them are going to come up to you, and for no fault of your own, they're going to perpetrate harm on you in ways that you won't be able to see or to anticipate. But that doesn't mean that it was your fault. It does mean at that point that if you have that arsenal for knowing how to deal with trauma and knowing how to deal with harm, that you can start that healing process right away, and you don't have to just repress it and pretend it was normal, right? That's the difference there. So that's what you know, being able to create our realities with our thoughts and through our beliefs, that's where that becomes helpful. It doesn't mean that you deserved any trauma because you weren't thinking your way out of it. If you were traumatized before that happens, all it means is that once you have that skill set, you can navigate that better. You can know how to source the help you need, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think it's super important for us to be witnessed in our pain, and to have that acknowledged on whatever level we need it personally. And for me, apparently, I needed it all across the indie music scene. So my pain was real big, y'all. But even that, as I said, I created that for myself, and I'm very proud of that outcome. So anyway, thank you guys for paying attention. And if you're interested in checking out the Repatterning Project, do check out those links that I've left in the description box. And also, if changing your narrative to your trauma, especially if you're someone who's faced a lot of sexual assault trauma and relationship trauma in your life, if that sounds like something you want to do, definitely check out my album. It's called Who Can You Trust? We're Arden and the Wolves, and I've created and wrote those specifically to serve as magical workings that could bring more and more healing beliefs into the collective. So I hope you enjoy it. If you do, check it out. Thank you again. I'll see you in the next video.